Today we're talking about MIG welding overhead. Now the main thing in MIG welding overhead is to set your machine just about the same as you would for flat or horizontal. Set it good and hot. Whether you push or whether you pull, you got to keep that stick out short and you got to set it good and hot because you want to use that arc force to punch and flatten that bead out instead of have it hang like hemorrhoids. A good technique to use is just a series of U's or a series of cursive E's. Not really circles where you're backing up into a puddle a whole lot, but if you loop back into the puddle a little bit, it'll let it smooth out and build up and preheat a little bit. Something like this. It just works. It gives you a way to kind of meter and about one loop per second. If you do it the same every time, you're going to have a lot of uniformity. Keep that stick out good and short. You're going to get your penetration, especially if you have that machine set good and hot like you would pretty much flat. Use both hands whenever possible. I usually like to crook that gooseneck between my thumb and my forefinger and prop with my pinky or my backs of my knuckles somewhere or another, and just that lets me make precise movements and helps me get a better weld. All right, we're going to set up another T-joint here. We're going to do the first half of it with a little pull angle. Pushing versus pulling doesn't matter. As long as you don't get carried away with your angle, they both work. We've done slicing and dicing and destructive tests, and we know that they both work. But you do have to have your machine set hot enough, and you do have to keep your stick out short. There's the first half with a pull, second half with a push. Second half, we're not even going to do loops. I'm just going to scoot forward and pause. Scoot forward and pause. And we'll show you the finished joint, both halves of it. They both look pretty similar, don't they? All right, we'll take that same joint and do a pull pass on the bottom of it. Again, trying to keep that stick out pretty short, not get carried away with the gun angle. Just a little series of looping cursive E's. When I get to the end of the joint, I'll just turn and head the other direction with a push angle without even changing, without even stopping or anything. On the second pass, when you're doing a 3-bead fillet weld like this, and some metal's thick enough that you have to do more than one pass. But that last pass, you've got a little nook to fill in there, and so it takes a little bit longer pause at the top to fill it in the undercut. So get ready, just be prepared to go a little slower on that last pass on a 3-bead fillet if you're welding something thick. Whether you're flat, horizontal, whether you're overhead or anything, the same holds true. If you're welding a big wedge on a log splitter, that last pass is going to be a little slower than the rest of them. So there's a 3-bead overhead pass, a lot of spatter. I haven't found the sweet spot yet on this little inverter MIG welder, but I will. All right, this is 030 bare wire we're using today, 7525 gas, 19.8 volts, 350 inches a minute of wire feed speed. If I was using a Millermatic 250 with 035 or any machine with 035, I would use about 21 volts and 300 inches per minute, and I would have a good hot arc, and it would punch in there and flatten out. Now, hand positioning, once again, always use both hands when you can. Sometimes you can't, but you always need to if you need a good looking weld. And how I'm propping this little gooseneck in here between my thumb and my index finger is a real handy way of just resting that gun where you can get good precise movements, keeping your stick out consistent, keeping your movements consistent, and it just helps. I've got it going back and forth here just to show you. Here's another way of just propping that with just putting pressure against the nozzle with your thumb. I've even got a TIG finger on here because, hey, that metal's getting hot. Even though I'm not TIG welding, it's helping me prop right against that hot metal. That's enough for today. We're going to do a recap now. All right, now, high points. That little looping series of E's is going to be your best friend on overhead or horizontal or anything pretty much. And when you can't use both hands, you can even jam that nozzle in there and wiggle it like you're walking a TIG cup. You got to keep that contact tip flush or protruding a little bit, or your stick out's going to be way too long. That's it for today. Thanks for watching weldingtipsandtricks.com.